Imagine losing the love of your life only to discover he was a complete stranger. That's exactly what happened to Eleanor. Buckle up, because this story has a twist you won't see coming. She bought a house without telling her millionaire husband, only to discover he had promised it to his mistress. Don't miss Chapter 10, the greatest story you've ever listened to. Hi, my beautiful family. I start with a prayer from my heart. May God bless you with health, peace, and endless love in your homes. May every pain in your life turn into strength, and may happiness always find its way to you. Today I want to share something very close to me. I have created a new channel called Mr. Peter Family, where the stories are shorter but filled with the same love and emotions I always give you. This is not just a channel. It is our second home built only for my beautiful family. You can find the channel link in my community post. I need your love and support there too, because without you nothing has meaning. We are one family, and together we will keep growing with love forever. If your heart is true, write present. If your love is real, write I am with Mr. Peter. The moment Sean Chad saw her laughing at something completely ridiculous, a wedding cake toppling over in slow motion, he knew his life had just changed forever. It was Michael's wedding reception at the Grand Hyatt in downtown Atlanta on June 15, 2019. Shaw had been nursing his third whiskey, watching his best friend fumble through his first dance as a married man when the four-tier cake began its dramatic descent toward the marble floor. While everyone else gasped in horror, one woman threw her head back and laughed with pure unfiltered joy. Erica Lindsay, 26, was seated at table 7 with other medical professionals from Emory Hospital. She had natural radiance that didn't need enhancement, smooth brown skin that glowed under the chandeliers, expressive dark eyes that sparkled with mischief, and a smile that could illuminate the entire ballroom. She wore a simple navy dress, her natural hair styled in elegant waves. That's the most beautiful sound I've ever heard, Shaw murmured to himself, completely mesmerized. His friend Andrew followed his gaze. Who, Erica? She's a pediatric nurse at Children's Healthcare. Sweet girl, but way out of your league, man. Shaw was 29, successful enough to wear a custom-tailored suit and confident enough to approach any woman in the room. He owned a growing construction company and had never met a challenge he wouldn't accept. But something about this woman made his usual swagger evaporate. We'll see about that, he said, walking toward table 7. Excuse me, Shaw said as he approached her table. I couldn't help but notice you're the only person here who found joy in disaster. I respect that. Erica looked up at him, taking in his tall frame, warm brown eyes, and nervous smile. Well, it's not every day you see a cake commit suicide at a wedding. I figured someone should appreciate the drama. Would you like to dance? Shaw asked, extending his hand. I promise I'm more coordinated than the cake. That's a pretty low bar, Erica teased, but she placed her hand in his. The moment their skin touched, both felt a jolt of recognition pass between them. The D switched to At Last by Etta James, not planned, but perfect. I should warn you, Erica said as Shaw placed his hand on her waist. I'm a terrible dancer. Good, Shaw replied, pulling her closer, because I was lying about being more coordinated than the cake. They swayed together, utterly offbeat and absolutely right. Erica fit against Sean's chest as if she'd been designed for that space. I'm Sean, he said softly. Erica, she replied, making her own name sound like music. Tell me something, Erica. What makes you laugh like that? Like you've discovered the secret to happiness? Erica studied his face in the soft lighting. I work with sick children all day. You learn pretty quickly that life is either tragic or beautiful. And sometimes both. I choose to find it beautiful. A wave of recognition washed over Shaw. Not just attraction, but his soul finding home. That's the most incredible thing anyone's ever said to me, he whispered. We just met 5 minutes ago. Erica laughed, but her eyes were serious. Sometimes 5 minutes is all it takes to change everything. They danced for 3 more songs. Completely lost in each other, Shaw found himself improvising silly rhymes just to hear her giggle. She told him about her patients, the little boy who called her angel nurse and the little girl who insisted on braiding her hair during treatments. You're remarkable, Shaw said as the music slowed. You don't even know me yet. Erica replied, breathless. I know enough. I know you find beauty in chaos. I know you've dedicated your life to healing children. I know your laugh is better than any song. And I know I don't want this dance to end. When the song finished, neither moved. Other couples swirled around them, but Shaw and Erica remained frozen in their perfect bubble. Would you like to get some air? Shaw asked. They slipped out onto the hotel's rooftop garden, where string lights cast a warm glow and the Atlanta skyline stretched before them. The June air was warm and humid, filled with magnolia scent. So, Erica said, settling onto a bench beside a fountain. Tell me about Shaw, Chad. Desperation, Shaw said, sitting beside her. I've been to a dozen weddings, and I've never felt compelled to talk to anyone. Then I saw you, and suddenly it felt like my life depended on knowing you. That's very intense for a first conversation, Erica said, smiling. I build things for a living. Houses, buildings, dreams made of wood and stone. But I've never felt like I was building something as important as this conversation. They talked until dawn, sharing stories about their childhoods and dreams. Erica had grown up in Savannah with her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. She'd put herself through nursing school, working 2 jobs, and chose pediatrics because children reminded her that hope was always possible. Shaw had started his construction company with a loan from his mother and a truck bought with his life savings. He'd grown up in suburban Atlanta, son of a school teacher and mechanic, learning hard work in his father's garage. As the sun began to rise over Atlanta, painting the sky pink and gold, Shaw pulled out a business card. "I know this is crazy," he said, writing his number on the back, "but I've never believed in fate until tonight. This is my number. If you call me, I'll take you to the best breakfast place in Atlanta. If you don't," he paused, looking into her eyes, "I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been." Erica took the card, their fingers brushing, sending that same jolt through both of them. "What makes you think I'll call?" she asked playfully. "Because you're the woman who left when the cake fell. You see beauty in chaos, remember? And this," he gestured between them, "this is the most gorgeous chaos I've ever experienced." Erica did call the very next day, accepting his invitation to breakfast. That meal turned into lunch, then dinner, then long walks through Piedmont Park and late-night conversations until sunrise. By their fourth date, when Shaw waited outside Children's Health Care, holding lavender roses and wearing that nervous smile, she knew they were building more than romance. They were laying the foundation of forever. "These are lovely," she said, kissing his cheek. "Not nearly as radiant as you," Shaw replied. And this time, the compliment didn't make her blush. Instead, she felt the quiet confidence of being truly seen, truly valued, truly loved. As they walked hand in hand toward his car, both felt something rare and precious taking root between them. It was the kind of love that poets write about, the kind that makes cynics believe in fairy tales, the kind that feels eternal from the very first moment. Neither could imagine that this perfect beginning would be tested by storms that could either prove their love unbreakable or shatter it beyond repair. Neither could predict that the house they would someday call home would become the stage where their forever would be decided. But on that warm June evening in 2019, with Atlanta glowing around them and new love singing in their hearts, Sean Chad and Erica Lindsay were simply two people who had found each other against all odds and decided to see where this stunning chaos would take them. Chapter 2: Building a Life Together. 2.5 years of loving Erica Lindsay had taught Shaw Chad that fairy tales weren't just stories. They were promises the universe made to people brave enough to believe in them. Their courtship unfolded like a romantic movie. After that first breakfast date, they became inseparable. Erica would meet Sean at construction sites during lunch breaks, bringing sandwiches and listening to his dreams. He would surprise her at the hospital with coffee during long shifts, sometimes waiting hours just to walk her to her car. By Christmas 2019, they were talking about forever. By Valentine's Day 2020, Shaw had been carrying his grandmother's engagement ring in his truck for 3 weeks. The moment came on a rainy Tuesday evening in March, when Erica fell asleep on his couch after a 14-hour shift, her head on his shoulder, looking at this extraordinary woman who'd chosen to build a life with him. Shaw couldn't wait another day. He proposed right there in his living room with takeout containers on the coffee table and her hair messy from hospital scrubs. When Erica opened her eyes and saw him holding the ring, her tearful yes made it perfect. Standing at the altar of Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Savannah on a sweltering Saturday in August 2021, Shaw watched Erica walk down the aisle in her grandmother's vintage lace dress. At 28, she moved with the grace of a woman who had found her purpose, her natural hair crowned with white roses that had been her grandmother's wedding headpiece 60 years earlier. "You look like you're about to faint," whispered Michael, Shaw's best man. "I still can't believe she said yes," Shaw admitted, his voice thick with emotion. When Erica reached the altar, she whispered, "Hi, handsome. Ready to do this forever thing?" Shaw, now 31 and more successful than he'd ever imagined, had to clear his throat twice. "I've been ready since that first dance." Erica had insisted on writing their own vows. When it was her turn, her voice carried clearly through the small sanctuary. "Shaw, you taught me that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice we make every single day. You choose to believe in my dreams when I can't see past my fears. You choose to make me laugh when the world feels too heavy. You choose to build something wonderful with me, not just with your hands, but with your heart. Today I choose you, tomorrow I choose you, and for every day God gives us, I choose you." By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the church, including Sean's. "Erica," he said, his voice breaking slightly, "you saved me before I even knew I needed saving. You see hope where others see broken things, joy where others see endings. And somehow you chose to see forever when you looked at me. I promise to love you through every sunrise and every storm, to build our dreams side by side, and to never stop dancing with you in our kitchen." Their honeymoon in Tucson became legendary among their friends. Shaw had surprised Erica with the trip, using every penny of profit from his latest project to rent a small villa overlooking the rolling hills of Kishanti. For 2 weeks in September 2021, they lived like characters in a romantic movie, with Shaw attempting to learn Italian and making Erica laugh with his linguistic disasters. When they returned to Atlanta in October 2021, they moved into a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Virginia Highland, 600 square feet with creaky floors and a kitchen barely big enough for one person. But Erica transformed it into a home with her photographs and plants filling every surface. Their cozy space became headquarters for Shaw's expanding construction company. Erica would come home from 12-hour shifts to find their kitchen table covered with blueprints and Shaw pacing around talking to potential clients. Erica never complained, not even when business calls stretched past midnight or when she had to eat dinner standing up because the table was covered with invoices. Instead, she would massage his shoulders while he worked and celebrate every small victory as if it were a major triumph. Their secret rituals began by accident and became sacred traditions. The heart-shaped pancakes started one Sunday morning when Erica was cheering Shaw after he'd lost a bid on a project. She used a cookie cutter to shape them, and when Shaw saw them, he actually teared up. "You didn't have to do this," he said, pulling her onto his lap. "I wanted to," Erica replied, kissing his forehead. "You need to know that even when the world doesn't believe in you, I do." The love notes in lunchboxes became their daily communication system. Erica would slip little pieces of paper into Shaw's work cooler. "Your laugh is my favorite sound," Shaw retaliated by leaving notes in Aria's hospital locker. Every patient is lucky to have an angel taking care of them, but their most cherished tradition was dancing in the kitchen whenever good news arrived. It started the night Shaw landed his first major contract in spring 2022. A complete renovation of the historic Morrison Mansion in downtown Atlanta worth $200,000. "Erica," Shaw shouted, bursting through their door at 9:0. "Baby, we did it. The Morrison project." They said yes. "They chose us over 3 other companies." Erica dropped the dish she was washing and launched herself into his arms. He spun her around their compact kitchen while she screamed with joy, both laughing and crying simultaneously. As jazz music filled their small space, they slow danced between the refrigerator and sink, both in workflow, overwhelmed by what this contract meant for their future. "We're really doing this," Erica whispered against his chest. "We're building something incredible," Shaw replied, his voice full of wonder. By their first anniversary in August 2022, Sean's business had grown from a one-man operation to a crew of 6 skilled workers. The Morrison project had led to 3 more historic renovation contracts, and Sean's reputation was spreading throughout Atlanta's preservation community. Erica, now 29 and promoted to charge nurse in the pediatric too, continued working overtime shifts to provide stability, while Shaw's company found its footing. She never complained about their modest lifestyle or suggested he take a safer job. "You're transforming the city," she would tell him as they lay in bed, listening to him talk about restoring Atlanta's architectural heritage. "Every building you save is a piece of history you're giving back to the world." "I couldn't do any of this without you," Shaw would reply, playing with her hair in the darkness. "You're the reason I believe in myself." Their love deepened through shared determination and mutual encouragement. When Shaw worked 16-hour days, Erica would bring him dinner on job sites. When Erica came home exhausted from losing a young patient, Shaw would run her a bath and hold her while she cried. By the end of their second year of marriage in August 2023, they had saved enough money to start looking for a house of their own. Not a mansion, but a small place where Shaw could have a proper office and Erica could plant a garden. As they sat on their balcony one evening sharing wine and watching the Atlanta skyline light up, Shaw took Aria's hand and brought it to his lips. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For believing in us when this was all just a crazy dream. For working double shifts so I could chase contracts. For making our modest apartment feel like home. For loving me exactly as I am while inspiring me to become better." Erica leaned over and kissed him softly. "This is just the beginning. We are going to build something incredible together." Neither could have imagined that within a year their fairy tale would face its first real storm, testing everything they had built together and forcing them to discover just how deep their love truly ran. But in that perfect moment, surrounded by dreams they were constructing brick by brick, they believed in forever with the absolute certainty that only comes from love. Tested by everyday challenges and emerged stronger than ever, the future stretched before them like an open blueprint, waiting for them to fill it with the life they would design together. A life built on laughter, sacrifice, unwavering faith in each other, and the kind of love that feels eternal from the very first dance. Chapter 3: The First Storm. The phone call that shattered their perfect world came at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in October 2023 while Erica was getting ready for her shift and Shaw was reviewing blueprints over his second cup of coffee. "Sean." The voice belonged to his project manager, Christopher, and it carried a weight that immediately made Shaw's stomach drop. "We've got a problem, a big one." Shaw set down his coffee mug, his hand already shaking. "What kind of problem?" "Morrison Development just filed for bankruptcy. They're not paying anyone, not us, not the electricians, not the plumbers. The bank has frozen all their assets, and their lawyer says, we're lucky if we see 30 cents on the dollar." The blood drained from Shaw's face. The Morrison project represented 60.0% of his company's current revenue. He'd already paid subcontractors for 2 months of work, advanced money for materials, and committed to a timeline that now meant nothing. How much are we out? Shaw asked, though he dreaded the answer. The project was worth $200,000, but with materials, labor, and equipment rentals we've already put in, we're looking at losing about $180,000. Shaw felt the room spin. That was more money than he and Erica had saved in their entire marriage. Shaw, Aria's voice cut through his panic. She was standing in the doorway, dressed in her scrubs, concern written across her face. What's wrong? He hung up and looked at his 30-year-old wife, who worked 64 weeks to support their dreams, who had never once doubted his ability to succeed. The Morrison project is dead, he said, his voice hollow. They filed for bankruptcy. We're not getting paid. Aria's face went pale, but she didn't panic. Instead, she walked over and placed her hands on his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. Okay, she said calmly. How bad is it? Bad, really bad. We're out almost everything. Erica, I don't know how we're going to survive this. For just a moment, Shaw saw fear flicker across his wife's face. They both knew what this meant, not just financial ruin, but the death of everything he'd worked to build. But then Erica did something that reminded Shaw exactly why he'd fallen in love with her. She pulled him into her arms and held him tight, her voice steady and sure. We'll figure it out, she whispered against his chest. We'll figure it out together. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers' meetings, angry phone calls from unpaid subcontractors, and sleepless nights trying to find solutions that didn't exist. Shaw watched his company crumble piece by piece as word spread through Atlanta's construction community about the Morrison disaster. 3 other clients canceled their contracts, afraid of being associated with Chad Construction's downfall. Equipment rental companies demanded immediate payment. Suppliers put him on credit hold. The crew he'd built over 2 years scattered to find work with more stable companies. By November 2023, it was over. Chad Construction, the business that had been Shaw's pride and joy, was finished. Shaw filed the paperwork himself while Erica was at work, tears streaming down his face as he officially dissolved everything he'd built. That night, when Erica came home from a particularly difficult shift, she'd lost a 7-year-old patient to leukemia. She found Shaw sitting in their darkened living room, surrounded by boxes of business files. It's done, he said without looking up. It's over. Erica sat down beside him on their couch and took his hand. They sat in silence for a long time, both processing the magnitude of what had happened. I failed you, Shawn finally whispered, his voice breaking. I failed us. You worked so hard to support my dream, and I couldn't even make it work. Stop. Aria's voice was firm but gentle. Look at me, Shawn. He raised his eyes to meet hers, and even in the dim light, he could see fierce love burning there. You didn't fail me, she said. You took a risk. You built something beautiful. You employed people, restored historic buildings, made this city better. The fact that someone else's dishonesty destroyed it doesn't make you a failure. But what do we do now? Shaw asked, gesturing at the financial documents spread across their coffee table. I owe more money than we have. My reputation is damaged. No one's going to hire me and I can't start over. I'm 33 years old and I have nothing to show for it. Erica was quiet for a moment and Shaw could see her analytical mind working. How much do we need to cover the immediate debts? She asked. About $45,000 to keep us from losing everything. But Erica, we don't have that kind of money. Our savings account has maybe $3,000 in it. Erica stood up and walked to their bedroom. When she returned, she was carrying a small jewelry box that had belonged to her grandmother. Inside were a few precious pieces she'd inherited, her grandmother's wedding ring, a pearl necklace that had been passed down through 3 generations, and diamond earrings. We'll sell these, she said simply. No, Shaw stood up so quickly that papers scattered to the floor. Absolutely not. Those are the only things you have left of your family. I won't let you sacrifice them for my mistakes. They're not your mistakes. There are challenges, Erica corrected him, and these are just things. Shaw, pretty things, meaningful things, but still just things. You know what matters. This, she pointed between them, us, our marriage, our life together. Everything else can be replaced. But your grandmother's ring would mean nothing to me if I lost you because I was too proud to do what needed to be done. Erica interrupted. She would understand. She would want me to fight for my marriage, for our future. The next morning, they went to 3 different jewelry stores before finding one willing to pay fair market value. Erica held Shaw's hand as they watched a stranger evaluate the last physical connections to her childhood, her family history disappearing into a cash transaction. I'll buy them back, Shaw promised as they walked out with a check for $38,000 someday when we're back on our feet. I'll buy every piece back. I know you will, Erica said, squeezing his hand. But even if you can't, it's okay. We're building new memories, new traditions. Those pieces served their purpose. They saved our marriage when we needed the most. With the immediate crisis handled, they settled into a new reality. Shawn took a job with a large construction company, working as a senior foreman for someone else after years of being his own boss. The pay was steady but modest, barely enough to cover basic expenses. Erica picked up additional shifts at the hospital, sometimes working 70 hours a week to help rebuild their savings. They sold Shaw's BMW and bought a used Honda Civic. They canceled subscriptions, gave up gym memberships, and learned to make every dollar stretch. But something unexpected happened during those dark months of late 2023 and early 2024. Instead of driving them apart, the financial crisis drew them closer together. They discovered reserves of strength they didn't know they possessed. They cooked simple meals together. Rice and beans, pasta with whatever vegetables were on sale. But Erica had a gift for making even the simplest meal feel special. She would light candles, play soft music, and set their table with cloth napkins she'd made from fabric remnants. "This is actually kind of romantic," she said one evening as they shared spaghetti with marinara sauce that cost less than $5. "When was the last time we had dinner by candlelight?" "Before I became a complete failure of a husband," Shaw replied, still struggling with self-blame. "Before you became a man who's learning what really matters." Erica corrected him. "I'm proud of you. You know, not everyone could handle what you're handling with this much grace." On nights when the weight felt overwhelming, when Shaw would wake up at 3 o'clock a.m. in a cold sweat, thinking about everything they'd lost, Erica would hold him until his breathing steadied. "We're going to be okay," she would whisper in the darkness. "I don't know how yet, but we're going to be better than okay. This is just a chapter, not the whole story." By spring 2024, their love had been tested by fire and emerged stronger than ever. They had learned to find joy in small things: Sunday morning pancakes when they could afford real maple syrup, long walks in Piedmont Park because entertainment had to be free, and their tradition of dancing in the kitchen whenever good news arrived. "You know what I realized?" Erica said one evening in May 2024 as they sat on their balcony sharing a bottle of wine they'd splurged on to celebrate Shaw getting a small raise. "What's that?" "I've never been happier in our marriage than I am right now." Sean looked at her in amazement. "How can you say that? We have nothing. We're barely scraping by. We have everything that matters." Erica replied, taking his hand. "We have each other. We have trust. We have love that's been tested and proven unbreakable. A lot of couples never get to discover how strong they really are together." "We know." As Shaw looked at his wife, her hair loose around her shoulders, her face glowing in the soft evening light, her eyes full of love and unwavering faith in their future, he realized she was right. They had lost a business, lost money, lost the easy life they'd been building, but they had found something infinitely more valuable: the absolute certainty that their love could survive anything. Chapter 4. The Family House. Lost. The second devastating blow came on a scorching July afternoon in 2024 when Shaw's phone rang as he finished a bathroom renovation in Buckhead, satisfaction filling his heart as his skilled craftsmanship transformed another family's home. "Shan, honey, I need you to come over right now." His mother, Jennifer's voice, was shaking in a way he'd never heard before, not even when his father had suffered his fatal heart attack in January 2021, just months after Sean's wedding when his business was starting to recover. At 58, Jennifer Chad had always been their family's rock, a retired high school principal who had raised Sean with iron will wrapped in fierce love. She didn't panic, didn't cry, and didn't ask for help, unless truly desperate. "Mom, what's wrong?" Shaw asked, already packing his tools. "It's the house. Baby, our house. They're taking it." The Chad family home at 1247 Magnolia Avenue had been in their family since 1952 when Shaw's grandfather, James Chad, Sr., bought it fresh out of the Korean War. The Victorian-era mansion, built in 1898, had been neglected when James Sr. found it, but he'd spent the next decade lovingly restoring every detail. Shaw's father had proposed to Jennifer on the front porch swing in 1983's. Shaw had taken his first steps in the grand foyer, learned to ride his bike on the circular driveway, and brought Erica there for Sunday dinners during their courtship. The house wasn't just a building. It was the foundation of everything the Chad family represented. When Shaw arrived 30 minutes later, he found his mother at the kitchen table his grandfather had built by hand, surrounded by legal documents and final notices. Jennifer was still striking with silver-streaked hair worn in an elegant bun, but today she looked every one of her 58 years and more. "Mom," Shaw said, sitting beside her and taking her hands. "Tell me what happened." Jennifer's composure cracked, and for the first time since Shaw's childhood, he watched his strong mother break down completely. "Your father," she sobbed. "Before he died, he took out a reverse mortgage on the house. I didn't know, Shaw. He didn't tell me, but he was gambling. Online poker, sports betting, casino trips I didn't know about. He lost everything we had saved for retirement, then mortgaged our home to cover his debts." Shaw felt the world tilt beneath him. His father had died of a sudden heart attack in January 2021, just months after Shaw's wedding when his business was gaining momentum. James Jr. had been a good man, a loving father and husband, but apparently harbored secrets that were now destroying their family legacy 3 years after his death. "How much do we owe?" Shaw asked, though he dreaded the answer. $412,000, Jennifer whispered. The house is worth about $450,000 on today's market. But after realtor fees, closing costs, and penalties, we barely have enough to pay off the debt. And I'd have nowhere to go. Shaw stared at the foreclosure notice, feeling familiar crisis weight crushing down again, just when they were starting to recover from his business failure. Just when he was beginning to believe they could rebuild their life. Another catastrophe threatened to destroy everything. When's the final date? He asked. 60 days. They're giving us 60 days to pay in full or vacate. As Shaw held his crying mother, his mind raced through impossible calculations. Even with his steady job and Aria's nursing income, there was no way they could come up with over $400,000 in 2 months. The house that had sheltered 3 generations of Chad men was going to be lost to his father's secret addiction. That evening, Shaw sat on his apartment balcony with Erica, watching the Atlanta skyline twinkle while he told her about the impending loss of his family home. Erica, now 31 and more radiant than ever despite stress lines around her eyes, listened without interruption as Shaw poured out his heartbreak. I feel like I'm watching my entire family history disappear, he said, his voice thick with emotion. That house is where my grandfather taught me to use tools, where my dad showed me what it meant to be a man, where I first brought you to meet my family. Every important moment of my life happened in that house. We'll find a way, Erica said softly, taking his hand. I don't know how yet, but we'll figure something out. We always do. But even as she spoke, both knew this was different. This wasn't a business loan they could work out of. This was a mortgage worth more than they could earn in 10 years, with a deadline racing toward them like an oncoming train. For the next few days, Shaw threw himself into finding solutions. He contacted every bank in Atlanta, applied for loans he knew he wouldn't qualify for, and researched investors buying properties and leasing them back. Each avenue led to a dead end, leaving him feeling more desperate with each rejection. It was during one of these desperate research sessions that fate introduced him to Amanda Martinez. He was working on a kitchen renovation for Mrs. Harrison in Sandy Springs, his mind preoccupied with his mother's crisis when she walked into the house. Amanda was the kind of woman who commanded attention effortlessly. She moved with confidence, spoke with authority, and carried herself like someone accustomed to getting what she wanted. You must be Shaw, she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand and offering a smile that was both professional and slightly flirtatious. Mrs. Harrison told me you were the contractor working on her kitchen. I'm Amanda Martinez, the listing agent for the property next door. Nice to meet you, Shaw replied, wiping sawdust off his hands before shaking hers. He noticed she held the contact just a moment longer than necessary. Your work is impressive, Amanda continued, running her fingers along the custom cabinetry he'd installed. The attention to detail is exactly what my high-end clients are looking for. Are you taking on new projects? Shaw, thinking about his mother's desperate situation and their own continued financial struggles, immediately expressed interest. Amanda handed him her business card, and when their fingers brushed during the exchange, Shaw felt something he tried immediately to dismiss, an attraction that had nothing to do with business. I have several clients looking for quality renovation work, Amanda said, her voice carrying just a hint of suggestion. I think we could do very well together. And honestly, you seem like someone who deserves more recognition than you're getting right now. Over the next 2 weeks, Amanda called Shaw regularly with potential projects. Some materialized into actual work, others didn't, but every conversation seemed to stretch longer than necessary. She had a gift for making him feel important, successful, like the kind of man who deserved more than his current circumstances offered. You know, Shaw, she said during one phone conversation, you're wasted working for someone else. A man with your skills should be running his own company again. You just need someone who believes in you, someone who understands what you're capable of. Shaw found himself looking forward to Amanda's calls, even though a voice in his head warned him that her interests seemed to extend beyond professional networking. He told himself it was just friendly conversation with someone who appreciated his talents, someone who saw potential in him when the rest of the world saw only a failed businessman. But late at night, lying beside his sleeping wife, Shaw found his thoughts drifting to Amanda's compliments. Her confidence in his abilities, the way she made him feel like the successful entrepreneur he used to be rather than the struggling employee he'd become. It was during one of their business lunches in late August 2024 that Amanda made her intentions clear. You know, Shaw, she said as they sat in a quiet corner booth at an upscale restaurant in Midtown, I've been thinking about what you told me about your family's house situation. What about it? Shaw asked, surprised she'd been listening so carefully to his personal problems. Well, I deal with distressed properties all the time. Sometimes there are creative solutions that people don't consider. Ways to keep valuable properties in families. Work with private investors who understand the value of historic homes. Shaw leaned forward, interested despite himself. What kind of solutions? Amanda moved closer, her hand coming to rest on his arm in a gesture that felt intimate rather than professional. The kind that require partnership with someone who has connections, someone who knows how to work the system. Someone like me. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that maybe we could help each other. I have investor connections who might be interested in buying the property and leasing it back to your mother at a reasonable rate. But these kinds of arrangements," she paused, her fingers tracing patterns on his arm, "they require trust, real partnership, a genuine relationship between the people involved." As she spoke, her touch became more deliberate, her meaning clearer. Sean knew he should pull away, should end this conversation, and go home to his wife, should remember everything Erica had given up to help him rebuild their life. Instead, he found himself captivated by the possibility Amanda represented. Not just financial salvation for his family's home, but a return to feeling like a man who mattered, who was wanted, who could provide solutions instead of just surviving problems. "What kind of relationship are we talking about?" he asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Amanda smiled, and in that smile, Shaw saw everything he'd lost over the past year. Confidence, success, the feeling of being desired rather than pied. She represented a world where his failures didn't define him, where someone saw him as powerful and capable, the kind where we both get what we need. She said softly, "I need someone reliable, someone skilled, someone who understands quality. And you need someone who believes in you, who can open doors, who can help save your family legacy." As Shaw sat in that restaurant, Amanda's hand warm on his arm and her promises whispering in his ear, he made the first decision that would ultimately lead to the destruction of everything he claimed to love most. He didn't kiss her that day, didn't make any commitments that couldn't be taken back. But he didn't pull away either. He didn't go home and tell Erica about Amanda's offer or her obvious interest in more than business. Instead, he found himself thinking about second chances and alternative solutions, and whether a man could love his wife completely while still being tempted by someone who made him feel like the person he used to be. And in restaurants and coffee shops across Atlanta, Chad began taking the first steps down a path that would test the very foundations of the love that had carried them through every storm they'd ever faced together, never imagining that his wife was already formulating a plan to save everything he was preparing to throw away. Chapter 5, A Sacrifice of Love. The idea came to Erica Chad at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday night in early September 2024 while she stood in the pediatric queue watching over a 6-year-old girl named Maya, whose parents had lost everything in a house fire but still managed to smile when their daughter opened her eyes. As Erica adjusted Maya's heart and listened to her parents whisper prayers of gratitude for their child's recovery, she realized that home wasn't about walls and roofs and Victorian architecture. It was about the people you loved and the lengths you'd go to protect them. And suddenly she knew exactly how to save the Chad family legacy. She also knew she had to do it in complete secrecy. For the past month, Erica had watched her husband carry the weight of his family's impending loss like a physical burden. Shah's shoulders seemed permanently hunched with stress, his sleep was fitful, and he developed a habit of staring at nothing for long periods, lost in calculations that never added up to a solution. The 60-day deadline was racing toward them, and every day without a miracle made Jennifer's tears flow harder, and Sean's desperation grow deeper. Erica had seen families destroyed by financial catastrophe, had watched marriages crumble under impossible circumstances. She refused to let that happen to the man she loved. The next morning after Shaw left for work and while she had 4 hours before her hospital shift, Erica drove to the international law office of Rodriguez and Associates in downtown Atlanta. She'd researched the firm online and chosen them specifically because they specialized in Caribbean property transactions and had experience with Caribbean real estate law. "Mrs. Chad," said attorney Isabella Rodriguez, a professional woman in her 40s, who reminded Erica of the kind of lawyer who got things done quietly and efficiently. "You mentioned on the phone that you own property in Jamaica that you'd like to sell quickly and discreetly." "That's correct," Erica replied, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the manila folder containing her father's inheritance documents. "I own 15 acres of agricultural land in St. Elizabeth Parish. The property has been in my family since my great-grandfather purchased it in 1946. Isabella examined the documents carefully, the original deed, the survey maps, the tax records that Erica had been maintaining dutifully for the 8 years since her father's death in the car accident that had also claimed her mother. "This is prime agricultural land," Isabella observed, spreading the survey maps across her desk. "Well-maintained, good access roads near the Santa Cruz Mountains, based on current market values for Caribbean agricultural property and recent development interest in the area. I estimate this land is worth between $420,000 and $450,000." Aria's heart raced. It was enough, more than enough to save the Chad family house and still have money left over to help them rebuild their savings. "How quickly could we complete a sale?" she asked. "For international property transactions, typically we're looking at 3 to 4 months. However, if you're willing to price it competitively and we market it aggressively to our established network of investors who specialize in Caribbean agricultural properties, we might be able to expedite the process. I need it done in 3 months." Erica said firmly. My husband's family is facing foreclosure and this land is the only way I can help them. Something in Isabella's expression softened, a gesture of love. I understand completely. It will require some creative maneuvering and additional fees for expedited processing. But I believe we can make it happen, whatever it costs, Erica said without hesitation. Over the next 3 months, Erica lived a carefully orchestrated double life. During the day, she worked her regular shifts at the hospital, coming home to comfort Shaw as he grew increasingly desperate about his mother's situation. During her breaks, she handled the complex international sale through encrypted phone calls and secure email exchanges. The land in Jamaica represented more than just her inheritance. It was her connection to her father's memory, to the island where her great-grandfather had built a life from nothing. After immigrating from Scotland, to the agricultural traditions that had sustained her family for 4 generations, her father had dreamed of retiring there someday. Someday we'll go there together, he told 12-year-old Erica during one of their last conversations before the accident. You'll see where your roots come from, baby girl. The land that made us who we are. Now, at 31 years old, Erica was selling those roots to save her husband's family legacy. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was trading one family's history to preserve another's. But as she signed document after document authorizing the sale of her birthright, she felt nothing but certainty about her choice. The hardest part was hiding her activities from Shaw. She opened a new bank account at a different institution using her maiden name and her hospital address to ensure all correspondence went there. She scheduled all phone calls with Isabella during her work hours, speaking in medical terminology that would sound perfectly normal to anyone overhearing her. The patient response has been positive for the treatment we discussed, Isabella would say when calling with updates, while Erica would respond with phrases like, excellent, we can move forward with the next phase immediately. Meanwhile, Shaw's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. He'd started staying out later, claiming overtime work or networking events. His phone was constantly buzzing with text messages that he'd read privately. When Erica asked about his day, his answers seemed rehearsed. She told herself it was just stress about the house situation, that the pressure of feeling helpless was making him withdraw. She was so focused on her secret plan to rescue him that she missed the signs that he was developing his own secrets. By mid-October 2024, the sale was nearly complete. The buyer was a Canadian investment group that specialized in sustainable agriculture projects in the Caribbean. They'd agreed to pay $435,000 for the property with closing scheduled for October 28. Exactly 1 week before the foreclosure deadline, Isabella had already contacted the mortgage company. They'd learned that the family could purchase the property outright for $410,000, clearing all debts and transferring clean title. That's unusual, the representative had said. Most people in foreclosure can't come up with that kind of cash. It's an inheritance situation, Erica explained, which was technically true. I'd like to handle this as a surprise for my husband's family. The closing on the Jamaica property took place via video conference on October 28 with Erica sitting in Isabella's office at 6 o'clock a.m. To accommodate the time difference, she signed away her father's dreams, her family's agricultural legacy, her last tangible connection to the island that had shaped her identity. Any regrets? Isabella asked gently as they completed the final paperwork. None, Erica said firmly, though tears were streaming down her face. This land served its purpose. It gave my family security for generations. And now it's giving my husband's family the same thing. The funds transferred to her new account within hours. After paying Isabella's fees and various transaction costs, Erica had $418,000 in cash, enough to buy the Chad family home outright and still have money left over. On November 1st, 3 days before the foreclosure deadline, Erica told Shaw she had to work a double shift and wouldn't be home until late. Instead, she drove to the mortgage company's office and completed the purchase of 1,247 Magnolia Avenue. The deed was transferred to her name. All liens were cleared and foreclosure proceedings were officially terminated. That evening, she drove to the house and let herself in with the key Jennifer had given her years earlier. Walking through the rooms where Shaw had grown up, where his grandparents had built their lives, where 3 generations of Chad family memories lived in every corner, Erica felt a profound sense of rightness about her decision. She spent 2 hours carefully planning her surprise. She arranged for a cleaning service to come the next day. She ordered flowers for every room, white roses for the dining room, sunflowers for the kitchen, lashis for the front hall. She arranged for Shaw's favorite dinner to be catered and waiting. The deed was wrapped in elegant paper and placed in a wooden box that had belonged to Shaw's grandfather, along with a note she'd written and rewritten a dozen times. My dearest Shaw, your family's legacy is safe. Your dreams are safe. We are safe. This house has sheltered 3 generations of Chad family love, and now it will shelter ours. I sold my family's land in Jamaica to buy your family's home in Atlanta because home isn't about where we come from. It's about where we choose to build our future together. Your grandfather's hands built these rooms. Your father's love filled these halls. and your mother's heart has kept them warm all these years. Now it's our turn to be the guardians of this legacy, to fill these rooms with our own love and maybe someday with children who will grow up surrounded by the same security and tradition that shaped you into the man I fell in love with. I love you more than property, more than money, more than anything in this world. Welcome home, my darling husband. Forever yours, Erica." As she locked the door and drove home to their cramped apartment, Erica imagined Shah's reaction. She pictured his shock, his gratitude, his tears of relief and joy. She imagined him spinning her around in the grand foyer, both of them laughing and crying and planning their future. She imagined many things that night as she fell asleep beside her husband, dreaming of the surprise that would change their lives forever. But she never imagined that Shah had already promised the very house she just bought to another woman entirely, or that her gesture of ultimate love would become the catalyst for the destruction of everything they'd built together. In her dreams, Erica saw herself and Shah dancing in the Victorian parlor of 1247 Magnolia Avenue, surrounded by the ghosts of generations past and the promise of generations to come. She saw children playing in the garden where Shah's parents had been married, saw family dinners in the dining room where his grandfather had carved the turkey every Thanksgiving, saw herself growing old in the same rooms where Jennifer had raised her son with such love and care. What she didn't see was Amanda Martinez, 24 years old and ambitious as wildfire, sitting in her own apartment across town, planning her own future in the very same house, confident in the promises that Shah had whispered in her ear during stolen moments of passion and desperation. Chapter 6: The Husband's Secret. The first time 34-year-old Shah had kissed 25-year-old Amanda Martinez was on a rainy Thursday night in September 2024 in the parking lot of a Starbucks in Midtown Atlanta, while his wife was working a double shift at the hospital and his mother was at home packing away family photographs to prepare for the loss of everything she'd ever known. It happened so gradually that Shah had convinced himself it was inevitable. Just two people drawn together by circumstances beyond their control, just comfort sought in an impossible situation. But as Amanda's lips moved against his, as her hands tangled in his hair, as she whispered that she'd been thinking about him constantly for weeks, Shah knew he was crossing a line that would change everything. "I've wanted to do that since the first day we met." Amanda breathed against his mouth, her body pressed close to his in the front seat of his Honda Civic. "Amanda, I can't. I'm married," Shah said, but his hands were still on her waist, still holding her close, still betraying the words coming out of his mouth. "I know," she replied, her eyes dark with desire and ambition. "But your wife doesn't understand what you're capable of. She sees you as someone who needs to be rescued. I see you as a man who could own this whole city if he wanted to." Those words hit something deep in Shah's wounded pride. For the past year, ever since his business collapsed, he'd felt diminished in his own marriage. Aria's extra shifts, her grandmother's jewelry sold to pay his debts, her constant reassurances, all of it reminded him daily that he was a man who couldn't provide for his own family. Amanda saw him differently. She saw potential, power, success waiting to be reclaimed. The affair had been building for weeks before that first kiss, growing from professional admiration into something more dangerous. What started as Amanda's business calls about potential projects had gradually shifted into longer conversations about Shah's dreams, his frustrations, his sense of being diminished by circumstances beyond his control. "You know what I see when I look at you," Amanda had said during one of their early phone conversations. "I see someone who's been carrying everyone else's problems for so long that he's forgotten what it feels like to have someone worry about him for a change." It was subtle the way she positioned herself, not as someone trying to steal him away from his wife, but as someone who noticed his struggle and cared about his well-being. She never directly criticized Erica. Instead, she would ask gentle questions that made Shah examine his own feelings. "You're too talented to be working for someone else," she would say during their increasingly frequent phone calls. "A man with your skills should be running his own empire again. You just need someone who believes in you completely." By October, their relationship had escalated beyond stolen kisses to stolen afternoons in Amanda's apartment, a modern loft in Virginia Highland that represented everything Shah felt he'd lost. Exposed brick walls, floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture that spoke of success and sophistication. Amanda would greet him at the door wearing silk robes or designer lingerie, making him feel like the kind of man who deserved luxury. But Amanda was clever. She never pushed too hard, never made demands that might send Shah running back to his conscience. Instead, she painted their affair as something noble, even necessary. "You're trying to be the grateful husband who appreciates his wife's efforts," she said one afternoon as they lay in her Egyptian cotton sheets. "The beautiful son who accepts his family's ruin, the humble employee who's content working for someone else. But that's not who you really are, Shah. You're a builder, a creator, someone who's meant to own things rather than rent them." Amanda had been weaving this narrative for weeks, that his marriage to Erica was holding him back, that his wife's self-sacrificing nature made him feel guilty for wanting more, that he deserved someone who would build an empire with him rather than someone who was content with mere survival. What about my mother's house situation? Shaw asked, voicing the worry that consumed most of his waking hours. She's about to lose everything. This was when Amanda played her master stroke. The promise that would ultimately trap Shaw in a web of lies he could never escape. I've been working on that, she said, tracing patterns on his chest with her finger. I have connections, an investor client who's interested in historic properties. He's willing to buy your family home outright, pay off the full mortgage, and then lease it back to your mother at a fraction of what she'd pay anywhere else. Shaw sat up in bed, hope flooding through him for the first time in weeks. Are you serious? Completely serious, that there are conditions. He wants someone from the family living there long term. The implication was clear, though Amanda was too clever to state it directly. She was offering to save his family's legacy in exchange for a future together. The house would become their home, their foundation for building the life of success and luxury she promised was within reach. I would need to handle things carefully with Erica, Shaw said. Though even as he spoke the words, he couldn't quite believe he was considering abandoning his wife. Of course, Amanda agreed. But Shaw, imagine it. We could turn that gorgeous Victorian into our masterpiece. You could start your construction business again, use the house as your headquarters. I could help you network with all my real estate clients. We could be partners in every sense of the word. Over the following weeks, Amanda painted increasingly vivid pictures of their potential future. She showed him architectural magazines featuring restored Victorian homes, talked about hosting dinner parties for Atlanta's business elite, described children playing in the garden where his parents had been married. She made it seem not like betrayal, but like destiny. The most insidious part was how she framed it as salvation for everyone involved. Shaw's mother would get to stay in her home without the crushing financial burden. Erica would be free to find someone who appreciated her sacrificing nature. And Shaw himself would finally get to reclaim the success and respect he'd lost. Your wife is a good woman, Amanda would say, seeming generous and understanding. She deserves someone who wants the quiet, simple life she's offering. You deserve someone who shares your ambitions, who wants to build something remarkable. By early November, Shaw was living two completely separate lives. During the day, he worked construction jobs and came home to Erica, listening to her worry about his mother's situation, accepting her comfort and support while secretly planning to abandon her. At night, he would claim overtime work or business meetings and spend hours with Amanda, planning their future in the house his wife was secretly working to save. The cruel irony was that both women were motivated by love for Shaw and desire to rescue his family legacy, but neither knew about the other's efforts. The collision came on November 3rd when Shaw's phone rang during lunch break at a job site. Mr. Chad, this is Carol Thompson from Nationwide Mortgage Services. I'm calling about the property at 1247 Magnolia Avenue. Sean's heart rate spiked. Yes. What about it? I have wonderful news. The property has been purchased outright and all foreclosure proceedings have been terminated. Your mother can remain in the home indefinitely. Purchased by whom? I'm not at liberty to discuss the details, but I can tell you that all outstanding debts have been cleared and the deed has been transferred to the new owner. The buyer specifically requested that we coordinate this as a surprise for the family. Sean's mind raced. Someone had bought his family's house, someone with over $400,000 in cash who wanted to surprise his family. Could Amanda have moved faster than expected with her investor client? I can tell you that it was handled through Rodriguez and Associates law firm. Rodriguez, not Martinez, which might have indicated Amanda's family connections, but still. Could there be some link? If Amanda had successfully arranged the house purchase, it meant their future together was secured, but why would she keep it secret from him? That evening, he came home to find Erica practically glowing with excitement. Though she was trying to hide it, she kept humming while she cooked dinner, smiling at nothing, checking her phone with barely contained anticipation. You seem happy tonight, Shaw observed, feeling guilty about how radiant his wife looked. Just a good day at work, Erica replied, but her smile was luminous. Sometimes everything just falls into place exactly as it should. As they ate dinner together, Erica kept glancing at Shaw with eyes full of love and excitement. Clearly bursting with some secret she was dying to share, Shaw found himself studying her face, remembering why he'd fallen in love with her in the first place, feeling the weight of his betrayal like physical pain in his chest. His phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Dinner tomorrow night. I have incredible news about our house situation. Everything's falling into place perfectly. When he met Amanda for dinner the next night, she was practically vibrating with excitement. Shaw darling, she said, kissing him passionately before he'd even sat down. I have the most incredible news. My investor client came through faster than expected. What do you mean? Shaw asked, though his stomach was beginning to knot with dread. He's purchased your family home. The property is officially saved, and now we can start planning our future there. But something didn't add up. Amanda, what's your investor's name? The mortgage company said the purchase was handled through Rodriguez and Associates. You said your family firm was Martinez and Associates. Amanda's face went pale. Well, yes, he often works through various firms for privacy reasons. But Sean was no longer listening. The pieces were falling into place with devastating clarity. The timing, Aria's mysterious excitement, the fact that she'd been working extra shifts for months while claiming she was just trying to rebuild their savings. His wife had bought the house, Erica had somehow found the money to save his family's legacy, and he had been planning to hand it over to his mistress. "I have to go," he said, standing up abruptly from the table. "Shaw, wait, I have to go," he repeated, walking out of the restaurant and leaving Amanda sitting alone with her lies and her shattered dreams of stolen houses and other women's husbands. As he drove home through the Atlanta night, Shaw was consumed by self-loathing so intense it made him physically sick. He pulled over twice, certain he was going to vomit, but all that came up was the bitter taste of his own cowardice. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself, it was how good Amanda made him feel. Even now, even knowing she had lied about having any investor, even understanding that his wife had sacrificed everything for him, part of him still missed the way Amanda looked at him like he was capable of conquering the world. That craving terrified him. It revealed something broken in his character that he'd never wanted to acknowledge. He needed to be seen as powerful more than he needed to actually be good. And that need had nearly cost him the love of the only person who had ever loved him enough to sell her inheritance to save his family. As he sat in his car outside their apartment building, staring up at the windows where his wife was probably planning the surprise that would expose his betrayal, Shahchad realized that some mistakes couldn't be undone, some lies couldn't be taken back, and some betrayals cut so deep that even the most forgiving love might not be able to heal them. Chapter 7. Mother's Involvement. Jennifer Chad was folding her deceased husband's shirts for the third time when the phone call came that would make her an unwitting accomplice in the destruction of her son's marriage. At 58, she had spent the past 11 months preparing to lose the only home she'd ever known, packing and repicking boxes of memories while fighting a losing battle against foreclosure proceedings. The Victorian house at 1247 Magnolia Avenue had been her entire world since she'd arrived as a 22-year-old newlywed in 1988, and had shot 2 years later full of dreams about the family they would raise within those historic walls. The house represented more than just Jennifer's personal history. It was the embodiment of the Chad family's American dream. Her father-in-law, James Sr., had been so proud when he bought it in 1952, calling it proof that a working man could build something lasting for his children. Jennifer's late husband had proposed to her on the front porch swing, and she had spent 36 years transforming the old mansion into a warm family home while working full-time as a high school principal. Now, on the morning of November 4, 2024, the impossible had happened. Mrs. Chad, the voice on the phone belonged to Carol Thompson from Nationwide Mortgage Services, and it carried news that Jennifer had stopped hoping to hear. "I'm calling to inform you that your property has been purchased outright. All foreclosure proceedings have been terminated, and you are free to remain in the home indefinitely." Jennifer sank into the kitchen chair where she'd received so many phone calls over the years. But this call was different. This call was a miracle. Purchased by whom? Jennifer asked, her voice shaking with disbelief and relief. "The buyer has requested to remain anonymous until they're ready to reveal themselves," Carol explained. "But I can tell you that all debts have been cleared. The deed has been transferred, and you have nothing to worry about financially. Someone very generous has given you the gift of keeping your family home." After hanging up, Jennifer walked through every room of the house, touching the walls that her father-in-law had painted, running her fingers along the banister that 3 generations of Chad men had polished. Standing in the garden where she'd married James Jr. her 41 years earlier. Someone had saved her life, her history, her everything, but who? The obvious answer was Shaw. Her son was a contractor. He understood the value of historic properties. And despite his recent financial struggles, he was the type of man who would find a way to move heaven and earth for his family. But Jennifer knew her son's financial situation too intimately to believe he could have come up with over $400,000, which led to more troubling possibilities. Had Shaw gotten involved with dangerous people, loan sharks, the kind of men who loaned money for construction projects and expected favors in return? Her late husband's gambling debts had taught her that desperate men sometimes made choices that haunted their families for generations. That afternoon, when Shaw arrived to check on her, as he did every day since the foreclosure notice, Jennifer was waiting with questions and barely contained anxiety. "Chan, honey," she said, studying his face carefully, as he sat at the kitchen table where she'd fed him breakfast for 18 years. "I got some incredible news today." "What kind of news?" Shaw asked, though something in his expression suggested he already knew what she was going to say. "The house has been saved. Someone bought it outright, paid off the entire mortgage. We get to stay." Jennifer watched her son's reaction closely. Relief flooded his features. But underneath it was something else, something that looked almost like panic mixed with guilt. That's incredible, Mom," Shaw said, but his voice carried a strange quality that made Jennifer's maternal instincts activate. "Do you know who bought it?" "They want to remain anonymous for now. But Shaw, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to the serious tone she'd used when he was a teenager. Caught in lies? Did you arrange this somehow? Are you involved with people you shouldn't be involved with? What do you mean? I mean, did you borrow money from someone dangerous? Did you make promises you can't keep? Because if you did, if saving this house is going to put you or Erica in danger, then I'd rather lose it and start over somewhere else. Sean's face went pale. Mom, no, I didn't arrange anything. I don't know who bought the house. But Jennifer had raised Shaw from birth, had watched him learn to lie as a toddler, trying to avoid punishment and perfect the skill as a teenager. She knew when her son was hiding something. The question was what, and whether it was something that would hurt the people she loved. Over the next few days, Jennifer began her own investigation. She called the mortgage company repeatedly trying to get more information about the mysterious buyer. She contacted real estate agents in the neighborhood asking if anyone knew about unusual sales activity on Magnolia Avenue. She even drove to the courthouse to research public records, determined to understand who had saved her family home and why. What she discovered in the property records both answered her questions and created new ones. The house had been purchased by someone using the law firm Rodriguez and Associates, which specialized in international transactions. The deed listed the new owner as Erica Lindsay Chad, someone who shared her family name but wasn't anyone Jennifer recognized. Erica Lindsay Chad, who could that be? It wasn't until she was lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling of the bedroom she'd shared with her husband for 33 years, that the answer hit her with sudden clarity. Erica Lindsay Chad. Her daughter-in-law had bought the house. Jennifer's first emotion was overwhelming gratitude mixed with genuine love. Erica, sweet Erica, who had worked double shifts to support Shaw's dreams, who had sold her grandmother's jewelry during their financial crisis, who had never once complained about the modest apartment they lived in. Erica had somehow found the money to save the Chad family legacy, but her second emotion was more complex and harder to acknowledge. A mixture of appreciation and uneasiness about what this meant for family dynamics. Jennifer truly loved Erica. Her daughter-in-law was everything she could have hoped for in a son's wife. Kind, hardworking, devoted, intelligent. But the fact that Erica now owned the house that had been in the Chad family for 72 years created a shift in family hierarchy that Jennifer found difficult to process. This house wasn't just property to Jennifer, it was the foundation of her identity as a Chad family matriarch. She was the woman who had maintained the garden where 4 generations of Chad family celebrations had taken place, the keeper of memories that stretched back to 1952. Now legally she lived in her daughter-in-law's house, dependent on the goodwill of someone who, however beloved, wasn't born into the Chad family legacy. Jennifer's concerns weren't born of malice or ingratitude. They came from a lifetime of watching families navigate complex dynamics around money and property. As a high school principal, she'd seen how financial imbalances could create resentment even in loving relationships. She'd witnessed marriages strain under the weight of one partner feeling diminished by the other's success or generosity. When Shaw came to visit the next day, Jennifer was ready with her thoughts. Not accusations, but concerns born of genuine worry about their family's future. I know who bought the house, she said directly as he walked into the kitchen. Shaw froze halfway to the refrigerator. You do? It was Erica, wasn't it? The deed is in the name Erica Lindsay Chad. Erica Lindsay Chad, your wife bought our family home. Jennifer watched her son's face cycle through multiple emotions. Relief that the secret was out, guilt about something she couldn't identify, and something that looked almost like resentment. She was trying to help, Shaw said, but his voice lacked conviction. I'm sure she was. Jennifer replied, her voice carrying warmth mixed with concern. And honey, don't misunderstand me. I'm grateful beyond words. What Erica did was generous and loving. But I think we need to discuss what this means for our family. What do you mean? Jennifer sat down across from her son, choosing her words carefully. Shaw, you know I adore Erica. What she did, it's extraordinary. But I'm worried about you. What do you mean? I mean, you look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. And now I understand why. Your wife saved our family and somehow that's made you feel what? Smaller, less capable. Sean's silence was answer enough. Honey, that's not Aria's fault. And it's not yours either. But it is something we need to think about carefully. This house has always represented the Chad family's ability to provide for each other. Now she paused, watching his face. Now that responsibility has shifted and I can see it's eating at you. She saved our home, Mom. She saved your memories, your life here. Isn't that what matters? Jennifer stood up and walked to the window overlooking the garden where she'd planted roses for 40 years. Of course it matters, but honey, it also creates complications we need to think about carefully. This inheritance was supposed to pass from me to you as it passed from your grandfather to your father. Now legally, I live in my daughter-in-law's house. Are you saying she shouldn't have done it? No, I'm saying we need to handle this properly going forward for everyone's sake, including hers. Jennifer turned back to face her son. Marriages are complicated. Shaw, people change, circumstances change. What happens to our family home? To my security if something goes wrong between you and Erica. Shaw sat down heavily at the kitchen table, and Jennifer could see the weight of some internal struggle crushing down on him. There's more, isn't there? She asked, her maternal instincts sensing deeper troubles. There's something else you're not telling me about this situation, Mom. It's complicated. Then help me understand it, because right now it looks like your wife made a tremendous financial sacrifice to save our family, and somehow that's causing you distress instead of gratitude. Jennifer didn't know about Amanda Martinez. She couldn't see that her son was trapped between two women who both believed they held the key to the Chad family legacy. She had no idea that her legitimate concerns about property ownership and family hierarchy were about to become weapons in a much larger battle for her son's soul. What Jennifer saw was a power imbalance that needed to be addressed thoughtfully and lovingly. In her mind, the proper solution was for Erica to deed the property to Shaw, restoring the traditional family inheritance structure while recognizing her generosity. Maybe, Jennifer said carefully, sitting back down across from her son, maybe it would be appropriate if the house were transferred to your name. Not to diminish what Erica did, but to restore the proper family structure. If she bought it to save our family home, then the loving thing would be for her to ensure it stays in the Chad family line. I don't think that's necessary, Shaw. I'm not questioning Aria's motives or her love for our family. But I've seen what happens when family properties get caught up in marital complications. I want to protect everyone, you, her, and me. The house should be in your name as the Chad family heir. Jennifer's concerns were reasonable from her perspective, born of genuine worry about family security and traditional structures. But her words planted seeds of justification in Shaw's mind that his guilt over his affair had prepared to receive. Over the following days, Jennifer's gentle but persistent suggestions about property ownership began to merge with Shaw's own confusion about his double life. Her loving concerns about family hierarchy became, in his guilt-ridden mind, validation that perhaps Erica had overstepped, that maybe her generous act had created complications rather than solved them. None of the three people involved, Jennifer, Shaw, or Amanda, who remained unaware of Aria's purchase, understood the complexity of the situation they were creating. Jennifer genuinely wanted to protect her family's interests and honor appropriate boundaries. Shaw was drowning in guilt and moral confusion. Amanda continued planning a future built on promises and lies. And Erica, the woman who had sold her father's land to save her husband's family legacy, remained completely unaware that her greatest act of love was being questioned by the very people she was trying to protect, or that her marriage was crumbling under the weight of secrets that would soon destroy everything she thought she knew about her life. The stage was set for a confrontation that would expose not just Shaw's betrayal, but the complex ways that even loving families could wound each other when fear, pride, and misunderstanding clouded their judgment about what really mattered and who truly deserved their loyalty and gratitude. Chapter 8. Suspicion and Small Clues. The first crack in Erica Chad's perfect world appeared in the shower at 6:15 a.m. on November 8, 2024, when she realized her husband had started singing a song she'd never heard him hum before. A sultry jazz number that didn't match his lifelong preference for classic rock and country music. At 31 years old, Erica had developed the kind of intuitive awareness that comes from years of working in pediatric intensive care, where the smallest changes in a patient's behavior could signal life-threatening complications. She'd learned to trust her instincts about when something wasn't quite right, even when all the obvious indicators seemed normal. And lately, her instincts about Shaw had been sending up warning signals she couldn't ignore. It started with small things. The way he'd begin showering immediately when he came home from work, even on days when his construction job couldn't possibly have been that messy. The new cologne that had appeared on their bathroom counter, something expensive and sophisticated that replaced the drugstore aftershave he'd been using for their entire marriage. The way his phone had become permanently attached to his hand, screened down on every surface, password protected in a way it never had been before. That's a pretty song, Erica said as Shaw emerged from the bathroom, towel wrapped around his waist, still humming the unfamiliar melody. What is it? Shaw stopped mid-note, a flicker of something that looked like panic crossing his face before he recovered his composure. Oh, just something I heard on the radio. I don't really know what it's called, but Erica knew her husband's relationship with music. Sean was the kind of man who could identify a song after 3 notes, who had strong opinions about every artist, and could recite lyrics to hundreds of songs from memory. He didn't just hear something on the radio without knowing exactly what it was. Which station? She asked casually, testing him while she brushed her teeth. I think it was 96.7. You know how they mix different genres during the morning show. Another small inconsistency. 96.7 was a pop station that Shaw listened to regularly, but they rarely played jazz, especially not the kind of sultry number he'd been humming. Over the next few days, Erica found herself paying attention to details she'd previously ignored. Sean's work schedule had become increasingly unpredictable, with frequent emergency calls that required him to leave at odd hours. His explanations for these calls were always vague: problem at the job site, Client emergency, equipment breakdown. But when Erica asked follow-up questions, his answers seemed rehearsed rather than spontaneous. Which client? She'd asked after he claimed to have spent Saturday afternoon dealing with a plumbing disaster. The Henderson project, Shaw replied without hesitation. But Erica remembered that the Henderson renovation had been completed 3 weeks earlier. She'd celebrated with Shaw when he brought home the final payment check, both of them dancing in their kitchen as they always did when good news arrived. The contradictions were minor, easily explained away individually, but they were accumulating like symptoms of a disease she didn't want to diagnose. Then there was the night of November 12th when their friend Jessica called during dinner, her voice carrying the kind of hesitant concern that comes from not wanting to cause problems but feeling obligated to share information. "Hey girl," Jessica said when Erica answered the phone. "I was at that new restaurant in Midtown yesterday. You know, Elev, the one with the rooftop bar. Anyway, I could have sworn I saw Shaw there with some woman. Dark hair, really attractive. Looked like they were having an intense conversation. I didn't want to interrupt if it was a business meeting, but I thought you should know." Erica felt her stomach drop, but she kept her voice steady. "When was this?" "Tuesday afternoon around 2:00. They were at one of the corner tables. Pretty deep in discussion. The woman was dressed professionally, like maybe a real estate agent or lawyer or something." Tuesday afternoon, Shaw had told Erica he was working overtime at a residential site in Buckhead, fixing problems with the electrical installation that had come up during inspection. The restaurant Jessica mentioned was nowhere near Buckhead, and certainly not the kind of place where contractors typically met with clients. "Yeah, probably work-related," Erica said, though her heart was pounding. "You know how these client meetings can be." "Of course," Jessica agreed, but her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "I just thought I'd mention it." After hanging up, she sat at their small dinner table, staring at Shaw's empty chair while her mind raced through possibilities. There could be innocent explanations. Maybe the electrical work had been completed early and he'd had a meeting with a potential client. Maybe the woman was someone from the permit office or an architect. But when Shaw came home 3 hours later, claiming he'd been dealing with an emergency repair that kept him at the job site until after dark, Erica knew Jessica's sighting couldn't be explained away as a simple business meeting. "How did the electrical work go today?" she asked casually as Shaw kissed her. "Hello, frustrating," he replied, settling into his narrative with what now seemed like practiced ease. "We had to rewire the entire second floor. Took us until almost 9 o'clock to get it finished." Another contradiction. If he'd been working until 9, he couldn't have been at a restaurant at 2 o'clock in the afternoon having an intense conversation with an attractive woman. That night, as Shaw slept beside her, Erica lay awake, cataloging all the small inconsistencies she'd been trying to ignore. The way he'd started working late multiple nights per week, always with explanations that sounded reasonable, but couldn't be independently confirmed. The new attention he was paying to his appearance. Better haircuts, nicer clothes, the expensive cologne that made him smell like a stranger. Most troubling of all was the change in their intimate life. Shaw had always been an affectionate husband, the kind of man who reached for her hand automatically, who kissed her goodbye every morning and hello every evening, who made love to her with complete presence and attention. But lately, even their most tender moments felt distant, as if part of him was somewhere else entirely. The next morning, while Shaw was at work, Erica found herself doing something she'd never done before in over 3 years of marriage. She went through his things, looking for concrete evidence. She started with the laundry, checking pockets for receipts or notes or anything that might explain his recent behavior. Most pockets yielded nothing but lint and loose change, which almost made her feel foolish for looking. But in his work jacket, buried deep in an inner pocket, she found a restaurant receipt dated the previous Tuesday, the same day Jessica had seen him with the mysterious woman. The receipt showed 2 meals, 2 glasses of wine, and a tip generous enough to suggest this wasn't just a quick business lunch. In their shared laptop, she discovered that Shaw's browser history had been cleared. Another first in their marriage. Shaw wasn't particularly tech-savvy and had never bothered with privacy settings before. The fact that he was now actively hiding his internet activity suggested he had something significant to hide. But it was their shared credit card statement that provided the most concerning evidence. Over the past month, there were 3 charges at restaurants she'd never been to. There was a purchase at a men's clothing store during what she knew were his work hours. And there was a charge for flowers from an upscale florist. Flowers that hadn't come home to her. Individually, each charge had a reasonable explanation. Together, they suggested a pattern that made her stomach turn. Erica sat in their tiny living room, surrounded by evidence of her husband's deception, feeling like her entire world was shifting beneath her feet. The man she'd loved for over 5 years, supported through business failure, for whom she had secretly sold her inheritance, that man was lying to her consistently and deliberately. But even with proof in front of her, Erica couldn't quite bring herself to accept the obvious conclusion. Maybe there was still an innocent explanation. Maybe the woman Jessica had seen was a business contact. Maybe the restaurant receipts and flower purchases were part of some elaborate surprise he was planning. That evening, when Shaw came home claiming another late night at work, Erica decided to test her theory directly. "How was your day?" she asked, watching his face carefully. "Mom," Shaw replied, setting down his toolbox and heading straight for the shower. As had become his habit, "We're behind schedule on the Riverside project, so I stayed late to catch up." The Riverside project. She'd never heard him mention that name before, and Shaw usually talked about his work in detail, sharing stories about difficult clients or interesting architectural challenges. "What kind of work are you doing there?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Shaw paused halfway to the bathroom, his back still turned to her. "Standard renovation, kitchen and bathrooms. Nothing too exciting." "What's the address? Maybe I could bring you lunch there sometime, surprise you at work." "That's sweet, baby, but the site's not really set up for visitors. Insurance liability issues and all that." More deflection, more vague answers that sounded reasonable, but provided no actual information she could verify. That night, Erica made a decision that terrified her. She was going to follow Shaw the next time he claimed to have a late work meeting. She was going to see for herself where her husband was really going and who he was really spending time with. The opportunity came 2 days later on November 15th when Shaw announced he had to work late again. "Emergency at the Patterson site," he said, using the name of a project that had been completed months earlier. "Could be there until 10 or 11. Be careful," Erica replied, kissing him goodbye while her heart broke a little more with each lie. "I love you too," Sean said, and for a moment his eyes held the genuine warmth she remembered from their early days together. An hour after Shaw left, Erica got in her car and began what felt like the most heartbreaking investigation of her life. She drove first to the area where she knew he was actually working, a residential renovation in Sandy Springs. His Honda Civic wasn't there. She drove to the restaurant where Jessica had seen him, then to 2 other locations where he'd made recent credit card purchases. No sign of him anywhere. Finally, at 9:30 p.m., she spotted his car in the parking lot of an upscale apartment complex in Virginia Highland. Erica sat in her own car across the street, hands shaking as she stared at the building where her husband was spending his evening instead of coming home to her. She didn't get out of the car. She didn't confront him or knock on doors or try to discover which apartment he was visiting. Instead, she drove home and waited, timing his arrival to see if his story would match his actual whereabouts. Shaw came home at 11:15 p.m., claiming he'd just finished a marathon repair session and apologizing for being later than expected. "How did it go?" Erica asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Exhausting," he replied, heading straight for the shower. "But we got everything fixed. Should be back on schedule by tomorrow." As Erica listened to the water running and her husband singing that same unfamiliar jazz song, she finally accepted the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. Shaw was having an affair. The man she'd loved and trusted and for whom she had sacrificed everything was betraying their marriage with someone who lived in that Virginia Highland apartment complex. But even knowing the truth, Erica couldn't decide what to do with it. Part of her wanted to confront him immediately to demand explanations and ultimatums. Another part of her wanted to pretend she'd never discovered anything to go back to the blissful ignorance that had protected her heart from this devastating reality. And a small stubborn part of her, the part that remembered dancing in the kitchen during their early marriage, that remembered how he'd held her during his business failure, that remembered the love in his eyes when he'd proposed. That part wanted to fight for their marriage, to find a way to win back the man she'd fallen in love with. As November 2024 drew toward its end, Erica Chad found herself living in the same kind of double life her husband had been maintaining. By day, she was the devoted wife preparing to surprise him with the salvation of his family home. By night, she was a woman who knew her marriage was built on lies, but didn't yet have the courage to tear down the illusion that kept them both functioning. The house at 1247 Magnolia Avenue sat in the autumn darkness, legally owned by a woman who had traded her heritage to preserve her husband's, unknowingly promised to a mistress who saw it as the foundation of her future, and occupied by a mother-in-law who had no idea that her family was about to explode into pieces that might never be put back together again. Chapter 9. The truth unfolds. The moment Erica Chad decided to give her husband the surprise of his lifetime was the same moment she discovered that her lifetime of trust had been built on a foundation of lies. It was November 18, 2024, and Erica had finally gathered the courage to reveal her secret purchase of the Chad family home. She'd taken the afternoon off from the hospital, arranged for Shaw's favorite dinner to be catered and delivered to 1247 Magnolia Avenue at 6:00, and spent 2 hours setting up flowers in every room of the Victorian mansion that now legally belonged to her. The house looked stunning in the late afternoon light, white roses and crystal vases throughout the dining room, sunflowers brightening the kitchen, mushies filling the grand foyer with their perfume. She'd placed the deed in its elegant wrapping inside the wooden box that had belonged to Shaw's grandfather, along with the love letter she'd written and rewritten a dozen times. At 4:30 p.m., she called Shah's work phone to tell him she had a wonderful surprise waiting at his mother's house, and that he should come straight there after work instead of going home to their apartment. "I can't tonight, baby," Shah said, and Erica could hear something strained in his voice that she now recognized as the sound of a man caught between two worlds. "I have a really important client meeting that could lead to some major opportunities." "Sean, this can't wait until tomorrow," Erica said, her heart racing with excitement. "Trust me, you want to see this today, Erica. I'm sorry, but this meeting could change everything for us financially. I have to prioritize our future." The irony hit Erica like a physical blow. She was standing in the house she'd bought with her inheritance to secure their future while he was making excuses to meet with his mistress. "Where's this meeting?" she asked, testing him one more time. "Downtown. Some investors interested in historic renovation projects. Could be the break I've been waiting for." After weeks of small lies and growing suspicions, this felt like the final confirmation. "Okay," she said, her voice carefully steady, "business comes first." After hanging up, Erica sat alone in the grand foyer, surrounded by the flowers she'd arranged and the catered dinner that would go uneaten, and made the choice that would shatter multiple lives simultaneously. At 6:00 p.m., Erica drove to the Virginia Highland apartment complex where she'd seen Shah's car 2 weeks earlier. Sure enough, his Honda Civic was parked in the same spot. This time, Erica didn't hesitate. She got out of her car, walked to the apartment building, and pressed buzzer buttons until someone let her into the lobby. Then, she climbed 3 flights of stairs, following the sound of familiar laughter coming from apartment 3. Through the partially open window, she could hear Shah's voice, relaxed and happy. "I still can't believe how perfectly everything's working out," he was saying. "The house situation is finally resolved. We can start making real plans now. Decide how we want to set up our home office. Maybe even expand that garden you mentioned loving our house," replied a woman's voice that was sultry and confident. "I love the sound of that. When do we tell your mother about us?" "I'm tired of all this secrecy." Erica felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Shah was talking about their future life together in the house she bought for him. He was planning to leave her for this woman who was discussing renovations to the Victorian mansion that Erica had purchased with her father's land. "Soon," Shah replied, his voice gentle in a way that made Erica's heart break. "I just need to handle this situation with Erica carefully. She's a good person. She doesn't deserve to be hurt unnecessarily." Taking a deep breath, Erica knocked on the apartment door. The conversation stopped immediately. After a long pause, the door opened to reveal a stunning young woman with long dark hair and perfect makeup. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, though recognition and fear were already dawning in her eyes. "I'm Erica Chad," Erica said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Sean's wife. I believe you've been discussing plans for my house." Behind the woman, Sean appeared in the doorway, his face cycling through shock, panic, and something that looked almost like relief. "Erica," he began, but the word stuck in his throat. "May I come in?" Erica asked, already stepping forward. "I think the three of us need to have a conversation." The apartment was expensive, sophisticated, with architectural magazines spread across the coffee table next to wine glasses. It looked like the setting for planning a future that didn't include her. "Mrs. Chad," the woman said, attempting to regain composure. "I'm Amanda Martinez. I think there's been some confusion. Shah and I have been working together to save his family home. The house was purchased by my investor client as part of a partnership arrangement." Erica turned to look at her husband, seeing him clearly for the first time in months. Not as the man she'd fallen in love with, but as someone living an elaborate lie. "Partnership arrangement?" Aria's voice was quiet, but sharp. "Is that what we're calling adultery now?" "Erica, please," Shah said, finally finding his voice. "Let me explain. What's really happening," Erica said, her voice growing stronger, "is that while I was working double shifts and selling my father's land to save your family's house, you were planning to move your girlfriend into it. I gave up my inheritance, my connection to my parents, my Caribbean heritage, the only thing I had left of my family to preserve your family legacy, and you were going to hand it over to someone else." The silence was deafening. Amanda looked confused, Shah looked stricken, and Erica felt fierce clarity crystallizing inside her. "Wait," Amanda said slowly, her confident facade cracking. "What land? What purchase?" "Sean, I thought your investor client bought the house." "There is no investor client," Erica said, turning to face Amanda directly. "There's just me. I'm the one who bought 1,247 Magnolia Avenue. I'm the one who saved it from foreclosure. I'm the one who sacrificed everything I had to give my husband the most generous gift I could possibly imagine." Amanda stared at Sean, realization dawning. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew your wife bought the house. And you let me believe." "I suspected," Sean said miserably, "but I wasn't completely sure until recently." "You suspected?" Erica stared at her husband in disbelief. "You suspected that I had made the biggest financial sacrifice of my life to save your family. And you said nothing. You let me plan this surprise while you were planning to betray me." Before Sean could answer, the apartment door opened and Jennifer Chad walked in. She'd been worried when she couldn't reach Sean and had followed the sound of raised voices. Sean, honey, I heard yelling. Jennifer stopped when she saw the three people in obvious confrontation. Mrs. Chad, Amanda said desperately. I'm Amanda Martinez. I've been helping Shaw with real estate matters concerning your family home. Jennifer looked around the apartment, taking in the intimate setting, the wine glasses, and her son's guilt-stricken expression. As a retired principal, she developed expert ability to read deception. Real estate matters, Jennifer repeated slowly, her voice carrying authority, in your apartment. At 7 o'clock at night, while my daughter-in-law was selling her inheritance to save our house. Understanding dawned across Jennifer's face. Her son was having an affair. Her daughter-in-law had made an enormous sacrifice, and she had been manipulated into questioning Aria's motives while Shaw was betraying everything their family stood for. Oh Shaw, Jennifer whispered, her voice heavy with disappointment. What have you done? The room fell into heavy silence, broken only by Aria's quiet, steady breathing as she processed the full magnitude of the betrayal. Then unexpectedly she began to laugh, not with humor, but with bitter recognition. You know what's funny, she said, looking at each of them. I worked overtime for over a year to help rebuild after your business failed. Shaw, I sold my grandmother's jewelry to cover your business debts. I gave up my own dreams to support yours, and when your family faced losing their home, I sold my inheritance, my connection to my parents, my heritage, my future to save it, and your response was to give it all to her. I never gave anything to anyone, Shaw protested weakly. No, Aria's voice was deadly quiet. Then what exactly were you promising her? What exactly were you planning? Amanda, seeing the situation spiraling beyond her control, made one last desperate attempt to justify herself. Look, everyone's emotional right now, but we need to think about what's best for everyone. Shaw deserves to be happy. He deserves someone who shares his vision, someone who can help him achieve his potential. The slap came so fast that no one saw it coming. Aria's hand connected with Amanda's cheek with a sound that echoed through the apartment. His potential. Aria's voice was perfectly controlled now, more dangerous in its calm than it had been in anger. I worked overtime for over a year to help rebuild after his business failed. I sold my grandmother's jewelry to cover his debts. I gave up my own dreams to support his. I sold 15 acres of agricultural land that had been in my family since the 1940s. Land that my father dreamed of retiring on. Land that represented my only connection to my Caribbean heritage to save his family's legacy. And you think I've been holding him back from his potential? Amanda held her hand to her queen's cheek, tears of rage in her eyes. You can keep your house, she said viciously, and you can keep your failure of a husband. I deserve better than this chaos. As Amanda grabbed her purse and headed for the door, she turned back one final time. For what it's worth, she said to Erica, you're a fool if you take him back. He doesn't deserve your sacrifices. And he never will. With that, Amanda was gone, leaving behind only wreckage and the sound of Aria's controlled breathing. Jennifer moved toward her daughter-in-law, her face filled with shame and regret. Erica, honey, she began, I need you to know that I had no idea about any of this. And I need to apologize for questioning your purchase of the house. I was wrong and I'm so sorry. Don't, Erica said, holding up her hand. Just don't. I need to think. I need to understand what just happened here and what it means. She looked at Cha, who was standing in the middle of the apartment, looking lost and broken. The house is in my name, she said quietly. The house that I bought with my father's land, that I intended as a gift to save your family's legacy. It's legally mine, and right now, I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. Without another word, Erica walked out of the apartment, leaving behind a son who had destroyed his marriage for a fantasy, a mother who had unwittingly contributed to the destruction and the shattered remains of a love story that had once seemed unbreakable. The truth was finally out, but instead of providing clarity or resolution, it had only created more devastation, more pain, and more questions about whether some betrayals could ever be forgiven or whether some love, no matter how deep, could survive the complete destruction of trust. Chapter 10, Greatest Revenge. 10 months later, Shachat sat in his rusted pickup truck across from 1247 Magnolia Avenue, watching the most extraordinary woman he'd ever known destroy his life with surgical precision, and realized that hell wasn't a place of fire and brimstone. It was watching someone you'd betrayed become everything you'd lost while you became nothing. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. For the first 6 months after their divorce was finalized in February 2025, Erica had struggled with depression, financial stress, and the overwhelming task of figuring out what to do with the Victorian mansion. She'd worked double shifts at the hospital while attending night classes in nonprofit management, slowly developing the skills she'd need for what would become her life's mission. By spring 2025, she'd made the decision that would ultimately define the next phase of her life. She would transform the Chad family home into something that honored both her sacrifice and her hard-won wisdom about the dangers of financial dependence in marriage. The Victorian mansion that had been in the Chad family for 72 years now bore a discreet but elegant brass plaque beside the front door. The Lindsay Foundation for Women's Financial Independence. What had started as Aria's personal healing project had grown into something much larger. Atlanta's premier resource for women seeking economic freedom after divorce, widowhood, or financial abuse. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of what had once been Sha's grandfather's study, he could see Erica facilitating one of her monthly networking meetings. At 32, she had evolved from the self-sacrificing nurse he betrayed into something formidable and inspiring. A successful advocate who helped other women avoid the kind of financial vulnerability that had once defined her own marriage. The foundation she'd started had grown steadily, but not without challenges. The first 6 months had been particularly difficult, skeptical board members questioning her qualifications, funding rejections from major donors who didn't understand her vision, and the constant stress of learning nonprofit management while working full-time at the hospital. There had been nights when she'd cry from exhaustion and wondered if she was foolish to think she could help other women when she'd been so blind about her own situation. But Erica had persevered, driven by a fury that had crystallized into purpose. Every room of Sha's childhood home now served a function that reminded him daily of his failures. The dining room, where his grandmother had served Sunday dinners, was now a computer lab where women learned bookkeeping and online marketing. The parlor where he'd played as a child hosted seminars on recognizing financial manipulation in relationships. The kitchen where his mother had cooked family meals was now a meeting space for a support group Erica lead called Starting Over at Any Age. Most devastating of all was the garden where his parents had been married, now home to a small memorial garden with benches dedicated to women who chose themselves. Each bench bore a small plaque with an inspiring quote about independence and self-worth. The foundation's success had been gradual but steady. Erica had been featured in Atlanta magazine as one of 30 under 35 making a difference and had been invited to speak at several conferences about financial literacy and domestic abuse prevention. She'd appeared on local morning shows and podcasts, always composed and articulate, never mentioning Sha by name, but making it clear that her work had been born from personal experience with betrayal and financial manipulation. But Aria's growing influence hadn't been a deliberate weapon against Sha. She had never set out to destroy his career or isolate him from their mutual friends. Instead, her work had created natural consequences that she sometimes felt guilty about, even though she knew she'd done nothing wrong. When construction companies chose not to work with Sha, it wasn't because Erica had blacklisted him, it was because the women in her network had learned to be cautious about men who had betrayed their wives' trust, and they shared that caution with their business partners. When their old friends gradually distanced themselves from Sha, it wasn't because Erica had turned them against him. It was because their wives had drawn their own conclusions about what kind of man would betray someone as generous as Erica. When Sha had tried to restart his construction business 6 months after their divorce, he discovered that many of Atlanta's most affluent neighborhoods were effectively closed to him, not through explicit blacklisting, but through the quiet word-of-mouth networks that Aria's foundation members used to protect each other. Women would simply mention to their friends that they knew someone who'd had a difficult experience with Chad Construction, and potential clients would choose other contractors without ever knowing exactly why. His mother, Jennifer, had initially tried to maintain relationships with both her son and her former daughter-in-law, but as the months passed, and she saw the remarkable work Erica was doing with the foundation, Jennifer found herself drawn more and more into that world. She now served as the foundation's volunteer coordinator, organizing events and managing the mansion's day-to-day operations. "I raised you better than this," Jennifer had told him during one of their increasingly rare conversations. "Erica didn't deserve what you did to her, and frankly, I'm ashamed that I ever questioned her motives about buying the house. She saved our family legacy and you threw it away for that woman." Jennifer's disappointment hurt more than Sha had expected. His mother had always been his strongest supporter, but now she looked at him with the same expression she'd once reserved for the most troubled students in her classes. Disappointed, but no longer surprised by bad behavior, Amanda Martinez had disappeared from Atlanta entirely within 3 months of the confrontation. Her real estate career had crumbled when several of her high-profile clients, women who had learned about the affair through Aria's growing network, had terminated their contracts. Last Sha had heard, she was working for a small firm in Charleston, her dreams of luxury and success as dead as their affair. Even Sean's old friends had gradually distanced themselves from him, not out of malice, but because their wives had learned the full story of his betrayal and had made it clear that maintaining friendships with Chad was incompatible with their own marriages and social relationships. Sha now lived in a small apartment in East Atlanta, working sporadic day labor jobs and struggling with depression that he couldn't afford to treat properly. He'd lost 30 pounds, his hair had started graying prematurely, and the confident, successful contractor, who had once owned his own company, was now barely surviving on the margins of his old life. But the ruleless twist was that Erica had never once been vindictive or deliberately cruel in her transformation. She had simply become so focused on helping others, so successful in her new mission, that Sha's destruction was merely a byproduct of her ascension. She was the sun, burning bright and purposeful, and he was a moth that had gotten too close and been incinerated by forces he'd never understood. The few times their paths had crossed in public at the grocery store, at a coffee shop, Erica had been politely cordial, asking about his health with the same professional concern she might show any stranger. There was no hatred in her voice, no desire for revenge. She had simply moved so far beyond him that his betrayal had become just another stepping stone in her journey toward helping others avoid the same mistakes she'd made. As Shaw sat in his truck on this warm September evening in 2025, watching through the windows as Erica left at something one of her foundation members had said, he saw a silver Audi pull into the driveway. The driver was Dr. Marcus Thompson, a respected cardiologist whom Erica had met 8 months earlier through her foundation work. His late wife had been helped by their services, and he'd started volunteering as a financial advisor. What had begun as professional respect had slowly developed into something deeper as they worked together on foundation projects. Shaw had heard through the gossip networks he no longer officially belonged to that Marcus had been courting Erica slowly and respectfully for several months. Unlike Shawn's impulsive, passionate courtship, Marcus' approach was mature and thoughtful. Flowers sent to the foundation with notes about how much he admired her work. Invitations to cultural events that aligned with her interests, support for her causes that wasn't conditional on personal gain. Watching Marcus walk to the front door of what had once been his family home, carrying a small bouquet of orchids, elegant, sophisticated flowers that made the grocery store roses Shaw had once brought Erica look juvenile by comparison. Shaw felt the final piece of his old life slip away forever. Through the window, he could see Erica answer the door, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure as she accepted the flowers. Marcus said something that made her laugh. Not the desperate, grateful laughter of a woman being rescued, but the confident, joyful laughter of a woman who was choosing to share her happiness with someone worthy of it. A tap on his passenger window startled Shaw from his surveillance. A security guard was standing beside his truck, clearly having been called by someone inside the foundation who had noticed his presence. "Sir, you need to move along," the guard said firmly, but not unkindly. "This is private property, and you're making the residents uncomfortable." Shaw nodded without argument, and started his truck. As he drove away from Magnolia Avenue for what he knew would be the last time, he could see the Victorian mansion in his rearview mirror, glowing with warm light and filled with the sound of successful women building their futures on the foundation of hard-won wisdom about love, money, and the importance of never again making themselves vulnerable to men who didn't deserve their trust. 3 months later, on a perfect December evening in 2025, Erica stood in the renovated kitchen of her foundation's headquarters, reviewing applications for their latest round of business grants. The organization now had a waiting list of over 400 women seeking assistance and a success rate that had attracted attention from philanthropists across the Southeast. The house felt peaceful in the evening quiet. The networking event had been their most successful yet, raising over $200,000 for the foundation's expansion into Birmingham and Nashville. Erica had just finished updating their financial records when she heard a soft knock at the front door. Curious about who might be visiting so late, she walked through the grand foyer, past the portraits of successful foundation graduates, past the thank you letters and awards covering the walls, past the comfortable furniture that had been donated by grateful members who had rebuilt their lives with the foundation's help. When she opened the door, she found Marcus Thompson standing on the porch, holding a small velvet box and wearing the nervous smile of a man about to change his life forever. "Marcus," she said, her heart skipping as she recognized the significance of his unexpected visit. "What are you doing here?" "I couldn't wait until our dinner tomorrow," he said, dropping to one knee right there on the porch where Shaw's great-grandfather had once proposed to his great-grandmother. "Erica, you are the most remarkable woman I've ever known. You've shown me what real strength looks like, what genuine love looks like, and what it means to build something meaningful from something broken. Will you marry me?" As Erica looked down at this good man, this accomplished man, this man who saw her strength as something to celebrate rather than something to diminish, she felt the last piece of her old life fall away forever. "Yes," she said, her voice full of joy and absolute certainty. "Yes, I will." As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, the sound of Aria's laughter filled the evening air, pure triumphant, completely free laughter that echoed through the halls of the house that betrayal had given her. The house where she had learned to choose herself, the house where she had discovered that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply becoming too powerful for your betrayer to touch. Inside the foundation's main meeting room, the evening's final attendee was just packing up her materials. A recently divorced woman named Sarah, who had started a catering business with one of Aria's Mirloins and was now thriving beyond her wildest dreams. She smiled as she heard the laughter from the front porch, recognizing the sound of another woman who had found her way to the other side of heartbreak and discovered that life could be even more beautiful than she'd ever imagined. And,